Hi, I'm Adam Jennings, and this is Awaiting Approval, a podcast about the messy human side of creative leadership. Today, I'm joined by Lucy Jackson, founder and chief clarity officer at Studio Jackson, for a relaxed two-way conversation about her journey, the lessons she's learned, and what it takes to lead with creativity and honesty. Lucy, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Of course, I've been looking forward to this one ever since we connected on LinkedIn. To start us off, and for people to get to know you a little bit better, if we were meeting in person today, where would you suggest we meet, and what would you order to drink?
Oh, that is a very good question, and I wish I'd had that question in advance. Okay, so we're probably going to meet in an English country pub because I miss them so much because I no longer live in England. And depending on the day, maybe I'd have a pint of Guinness or a glass of champagne.
Oh, very nice. Well, I will raise you a metaphorical glass of champagne in an English pub to
Very
cheer
good.
you on for this recording. And in a similar vein, I know you're not at your desk right now, you're in a hotel, but if we were at your normal kind of working desk, it, is there something that is always on your desk or nearby that would give people listening or watching a little sort of insight into who you are or perhaps how you work?
You know, I work very, very remotely. I work with a laptop, I work with a phone, and I have a pen and a pencil, and that's it. And I don't actually have a desk. I have a kitchen table, a kitchen island, a chair in the living room. There is a desk that I never use. Sometimes I sit outside. My wife is desperate for me to use a desk and just have my own space, but I generally just like to be in the kitchen in the area where the light is the best.
Love it.
Yeah.
And like how, I mean, we'll kind of get into your career and where you are and everything that's happened in a little bit. But for you right now, where you have that freedom to work wherever you are, and I would imagine, there was a sort of element of remote work in the more corporate side of your career as well. But how does that feel for you? What do you prefer? Going into the office 5 days a week, static desk, everything set up, or do you prefer that kind of flexibility that you've got now?
1,000% the flexibility. I used to be in the office. I was full time in the office until COVID. And then ever since COVID, I've either been hybrid or fully remote. And for me right now, where I am in my life, I'm building a business of one, and I am a mother to a nearly 4-year-old. And the flexibility and the freedom is the number one most important thing to me. I am very social, but I don't know if I'm a what do they call it? An introverted extrovert. I like to be around people, but then I have to have my space and have my time. I'm very independent. So I like to have autonomy. I like to own my own time. I like to set my schedule, and then I like to be with people when I need to be with people. Get those creative juices flowing. But I cannot tell you how important the freedom and the flexibility is to me right now in my life.
That resonates completely. I love the ability, and or have always loved the ability to just be able to say, you know what, this particular situation, this whatever it is, isn't working right now. I
Mm.
need to take 20 minutes and move to a different chair, or move to a different room, or turn something the other way. Um, and the point where I can remember the point where I discovered that it's completely okay for me to say, I'm going to go out of the office now and get a drink and come back again. It's not like school where you can't leave your chair, it's okay to kind of stand up, walk out for a bit and come back again.
It's like go to the hotel bar and have some happy hour.
Have a Guinness and a champagne.
There's there's probably a cocktail for that. I don't know. Um,
I think there is. It's black crown,
oh,
black,
it's
so like something. I vaguely kind of remember something. Um, where were we? We were talking about the flexibility of being able to move desks and things like that. So with that, with the flexibility that you have now and building that business of one,
Mm.
does that mean you have sort of lightened your tech load and you've just gone down to the bare essentials?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep, just the bare essentials. I do have a second monitor that I haven't used in forever. But I've been on a laptop actually for a really long time because my role has evolved so much in terms of creative brand building. There's some business development in there. So I've been on the move and I figured out a way just to do all of my decks and my creative work through the laptop without needing anything else. I don't even have a mouse, which is kind of strange when I think about it. It just is all right here on this small little amazing machine in front of me.
And like, if you cast your mind back to the very first machine you started doing creative work on, it's like, I think that smile says everything, right? Are we talking kind of big, huge, clunky monitor and
Remember what was the Mac that came out? What was the name of it? It was like it either had like a green back or an orange back. It was in
oh
like
yes.
when I went to university, 1999, I had one of those MacBook, whatever they were called. Um, and it had this big clunky hard thing that sat next to you. That was the one that I had. Uh, yeah, and then you always knew that you couldn't go anywhere, They were so big, so big. And I think it's amazing now that we can do everything, on the laptop or on a phone. But I do still like the pen and paper, you know, trying to keep my notes in different places or, sketch something out. Um, but it's nice to have the flexibility wherever you are.
Mm. I'm a big proponent of pen and paper still. There's something so incredibly satisfying on a to-do list,
Mhm.
for example, of actually physically striking something off once you've done it.
Yeah.
Sometimes with much force, depending on how much you've enjoyed the task or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talking of going back to the first machine, I'd love for you to take a few moments to go right back to your first role in the sort of creative sphere, and then take us on a journey from there to where you are now. You don't have to hit every sort of bullet point, but just key milestones along the way.
Yeah. So my very first job in creative, I worked for a company called Kinnerton Confectionery, based in Kentish Town in London. They are still around. They're a chocolate manufacturer, and I designed packaging for chocolate, advent calendars, Easter eggs. There was a lot of licensing in there, character work, Marvel, Simpsons, etc., and then some private label for Marks and Spencers. It was my first job, graphic designer, I think, or design manager, something like that. And it wasn't necessarily my dream job, but I learned so much. I was this 22-year-old. I'd gone down to London and I thought I knew everything. I thought I was the shit. And I wasn't. I didn't have a clue at all. And I had to unlearn all the things that I thought that I knew and kind of humble myself a little bit and respect all of the people around me and develop these skills. So, so that was my first job. I got it right out of university. And I went to university in De Montfort in Leicester, did a degree in design management and innovation, which at the time I remember finishing the degree and it was design, marketing, and design management. And I thought, oh, I've done this degree and it's like in three things in one. What have I done? And it ended up serving me really well. But I went down to London, got this job, and I really thought that, I'd got a first class degree. I'd won student of the year. There I am at this job. And I thought I knew everything and I knew absolutely nothing. And it was a very amazing, humbling experience. And I stayed there, got promoted, did pretty well, and then eventually wanted to do something else because I've always been obsessed with brands. When I was 13 or 14, something like that, early mid 90s, I became obsessed with Evian bottled water. And I tell this story because it kind of shows where my love for emotional branding came from. But at the time, Evian was sponsoring the fashion shows, and I somehow was seeing Kate Moss and Christy Turlington and Linda and Cindy and all of these girls walking around with this water. And I wanted to be part of that. I had no idea what it was. But I could see, I don't even know where I was seeing it. It was probably in the magazines because it was obviously way before social media and before the internet. But I wanted to feel that way about other things. And I thought, if I can feel this way about something as mundane as water, then how can I help other people have that experience? And so from there, I had this vision. I was going to be an art director at Saatchi and Saatchi. And I remember I used to work in the paper shop in the small village outside York where I grew up. And I remember somebody asking me, what do you want to be? And I said, I'm going to be an art director at Saatchi and Saatchi. And I probably didn't even know what that meant at the time. But anyway, off I went to London, did this job, and I wanted to make a change because I wanted to work with brands. More in the fashion space or in the consumer space, less in that entertainment space. And I got a job at a company called the Licensing Company, and I absolutely loved it. It was elevated. Um, the CEO was so inspirational to me. So I went to New York in 2001 with my family, and I fell in love with the city. And there was an energy to this place. And I thought, I need to live and work here at some point. Didn't know how I was going to figure it out. Then I got the job at TLC, and they had an office in New York. And they used to do these big global get togethers because they had offices all around the world. This was, before the financial crash and everything like that. And we were in Saint Tropez on this like 3-day work thing. And I remember talking to the CEO, and I was going to New York with some girlfriends, and I happened to say to her, "Oh, I'm going to be in New York in a week. I would love to come by the office and just, see what it's like." And we were just having a conversation, very organic, and I just said, "I would love to live and work in New York at some point." And she looked at me and she gave me this smile and this wink, and she said, "Come into the office, let's talk." And I knew immediately in that moment that I was going to go and move to New York. And it was so serendipitous. It was just, I'd put this thing out in the universe. And yes, I'd taken action, but all of these things were aligning. And there I was talking to the CEO. I probably had something to drink and was just like, let me just tell this person that this is what I'm doing. And within 6 months, I'd moved over and I had been transferred to the New York office. So I worked in brand licensing. I managed the Jeep Chrysler product development program globally. I worked on Jane Packer, a florist, Jelly Belly, doing creative strategy, Malibu, etc. I did that for several years. And then I moved over to a company called Sequential Brands Group, also based in New York. Sequential Brands was a brand owner. I was the 5th employee, I think. And they owned Ellen Tracy. Eventually, they owned Joe's Jeans. We bought Jessica Simpson when I was there. We bought Martha Stewart when I was there. William Rast, which was Justin Timberlake's brand. And I went there as an art director and then became a creative director. Stayed there for 6 years. And then I moved over to a company called The Lions Model Management, and I built their branding division. And I'd worked with the Lions in my role at Sequential Brands, and I'd done some capsule collections with some of their talent for the brands that we owned. And I moved over to their side to build their branding division to help talent create their own brands or do special projects. I wasn't an agent, I was a brand strategist. I did branding for the agency, and I stayed there also for 6 years. It's interesting. When I updated my LinkedIn profile after I got laid off, I went back and I had a look. Every single job that I've had, I've been there for 6 years, every single one. And it's kind of weird. I don't know what that means. You could argue that I stayed in some of them for maybe a couple of years too long. And then, yeah, so I felt like I'd kind of come full circle because when I was 13, I was, like I say, I became obsessed with the water. And then I was thinking about the models and the fashion and the styling. And then I worked for this talent management agency in that world. And it was a roller coaster. It was a ride. And then here I am now building my own business, doing something similar, but yet completely different.
Fantastic. There's so much to unpack in there
There's a lot.
the from the drive, at a very early age, that understanding and the feeling of the emotive response to a piece of creative work and how important that is.
Hmm.
Um, and before I kind of go into the other bits, I'd love to dive into that a little bit. And has that been a through line for you? Have you always kind of honed in on,
Yeah.
okay, here's the brief, fine, but what's the emotive thing
Mhm.
that we need to hit here?
Yeah, it's if you think about Simon Sinek, he's like says, start with the why. Like, what is your why? And that's what it is. I for me, like I cry at TV commercials that you shouldn't cry at. I cry at movies. I just feel very, very deeply and very empathetic. And I just think there's something so magical when you can look at a piece of creative and you can see yourself in it, or see your potential, or see a vision, and feel something. Um, and it's always been a through line, I think, of everything that I've done and everything that I try to do. Maybe to a fault at sometimes, because I want to really get in under the skin. But I just love that blend of the why we're doing it, the outcome that we're trying to achieve, and the strategy that goes in there as well. I don't think that creative should just be creative for creative sake. And I think you really need to be thinking about that end customer, because what are they getting out of it? What are you bringing to the table to them, and how can you give them the best possible experience?
100%. And what I love is how people that really focus, and I'm completely aligned with you. For me, everything is about story, and the purpose of story is to elicit an emotional response
Yep.
for a goal, right? Like to sell something, or to raise awareness of something, or to teach
Mm.
uh, something. Like if we go right back to sitting around a campfire, stories were there to teach us how to hunt better. And so there was always a goal, but that goal is best served or best achieved by eliciting an emotional response.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I would love to know your particular route in that creative tension between the creative saying we have to honor that that emotional response, but we
Mm.
also have to say, okay, but this is a business as well. And so we need to sell product, or we need to hit a target, or whatever it might be. So how do you go about, and I know it's different for every project, but in general, how do you go about matching up those two?
You know, I wish I had an answer that was, oh, I have this exact process and these are the steps that I follow. But I think for me, it's really quite instinctive. I love pattern spotting. I will do a deep dive on, the brand, the person, whatever it is. And then I'm also going to look at all of the market initiatives and the climate and what's going on, and try to think about the customer base and what is it that we're trying to achieve with that end result. I don't have I guess it just comes naturally to me, which is I'm very good at spotting a through line or a pattern or something that other people can't necessarily see. I use both sides of my brain. I'm very creative and visionary, but I'm very, very strategic as well. And somehow it just comes together and works. That's like, I don't know. It's probably not very helpful for people listening.
I think in a way it is, because essentially it sounds to me what you're saying is that there is a gut instinct at play that
Mm.
serves you well.
Yeah.
And I've had that, I've often had that, especially with the work I've done on movie marketing, where you can just feel this isn't going to work. I need to step back and redo this a different way. I need to approach this slightly differently. Why? Can't tell you. It's
Yep.
just a feeling.
Hmm.
And you'll have some clients that are okay, trust you, fine. And there you'll have some clients where you really have to battle hard to
Yeah.
start again. But it's really important when you get that feeling, I think, to listen to that.
Yeah.
Um, Especially when you have got to a point where you've kind of fine-tuned that gut instinct.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing that I loved about that, about the bullet point journey there, you talked about every 6 years, it seems to be that you've changed. And I have no idea to the validity of this, but I've always been told that our bodies completely sort of regenerate roughly every 7 years.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
so I love that there's like a little
Mhm.
kind of push towards that moment. I know it doesn't quite work like that because
No,
everything's going all
I
over, but
believe you. I completely agree. Um, I think, you know, I believe that the universe is working for you, even though, a lot of the times it might feel like it's working against you. And I think that it is a combination of taking action and putting something out there, maybe not trusting yourself enough to make a change. Like I said, I think perhaps I stayed in a couple of roles maybe a little bit too long, probably for fear of not being able to find something else or having that comfort. I think comfortability is pretty dangerous, because you will just go with the flow. instead of maybe challenging yourself. But then, yes, I think somehow the universe comes and just smacks you around the face and says, no, this is what it is. And, something presents itself to you or is given to you, and a decision is made that is out of your control, but ends up being the best decision for you.
Yeah. Yes. I can say no more than that. I still have a ringing in my brain from the last time the universe slapped me around the chops and said, "Wake up and change this." So
Hmm.
I know exactly what you mean completely.
Yeah.
The other thing that I loved about your story was that um, the knowing you landed in New York and you experienced it for the first time and you knew this is the place for me.
Yeah.
I had exactly the same feeling the first time I went to New York. I went there with someone who had an absolute drive to go there from a very young age. And she had always told me, "You're going to love this place." And
Mm.
typically, when someone or a group of people tell me I'm going to love something, like if lots of people say, "Oh, you're going to love this movie," there's some stupid ego response in me that's like, "No, I'm not." And it wasn't quite there for this. I was kind of a bit more open, but when I first got there, I just fell in love with that city. There is a
Yeah.
vibe there. There's an energy there. So I
Mm.
understand that completely, and I'm very, very envious that you got there and that you're there.
Yeah.
Um, what, it, but I also love the fact that where you suggested to meet was an English pub. So,
Yeah.
what elements of the two, if you could combine to make the sort of perfect place, what elements of the two would you bring together?
I mean, New York has this, like you say, it has this energy. It's a hard place to live. It is an amazing place to live. It is also a hard place to live. It will chew you up and spit you out, but you can lose yourself and find yourself all over again, which is exactly what I've done. It's a melting pot of people and culture. And, I lived in London for 7 years before I moved to New York. But what I love about New York is the fact that it is so walkable, and you walk from one neighborhood to the next and they're completely different. And you can go out and come home at 6 o'clock in the morning and you've experienced like five different lives in the space of that time. And you've met the most random people. I was out with a friend last night and I said, do you remember when we went to our other friends? She'd got engaged and we were going to go dress shopping. We went for brunch and we ended up in a hip hop music video because we met some people on the street, and then we ended up in this video. And I'm like, I don't think I'm really the person you want in this video, but sure, you know? Um, and so I love that big city. You can do anything. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to move to the US, because the optimism, which I know for British people can find, the stereotypical Americans can do anything. I love that. I think that there is something so infectious about this can-do attitude, and I think New York moves very quickly, and there's just so much bright lights, big city. It's amazing. But then on the flip side, when I think about England, I think about the Lake District, or my wife is from Devon and it's beautiful. I'm from Yorkshire, also beautiful. And the English pub, maybe with a river running next to it, Sunday dinners, just that classic comfort and the most incredible, beautiful scenery. So to blend those two things together, I think that would be ideal. Yeah.
I love it. And
Yeah.
what you're saying, I love this, the idea, the story of just walking down the street and then you end up in a hip hop video. That's just brilliant. So New York, I love it.
It's true. Yeah.
Um, when you coming back to the bullet points, your career sort of story, when you think about all those places that you've worked at, is there a time that you would go back to yourself, but knowing what you know now? And if there is, what would you say to yourself?
Oh, totally. I think for every single one, aside from the very first one, um, I would go back and say, you know what you're doing, just trust yourself and do it. I think that I have had incredible experiences with if I reel off the names of the people that I've worked with, the celebrities, it's insane. I'm a girl from a small village outside York, and I've worked with some of the biggest names in music, fashion, entertainment. And I think at some point that has got in my own way. And I thought it needs to be perfect, it needs to be better, it has to be this. And the answer is just do it, just start and move forward. And it doesn't matter if you fail, because you're not failing. Nothing is failure. Everything is progress. And, I do remember a couple of times thinking, I don't know if I can do this. And the answer is, yes, you can. You just have to keep taking those steps and show up every day and keep trying. And that's how you dispel fear, by moving forward. So that's what I would go back and say. And I would say, look, you're pretty fucking awesome. Just do it. So
I love that. I love those words. And I
yeah.
love I appreciate your candidness about effectively the imposter syndrome
Hmm.
side of it. I think it's something that we all have, no
Hmm.
matter what stage in our career, no matter what industry we work in. But I think it's especially prevalent in the creative industries because it's an emotive thing that we do, because we put passion and heart and soul into our work. And so, on the one hand, it's very easy to take a knock of art direction or criticism very
Hmm.
harshly, and on the other side, on the other hand, side, coin, whatever, it's, there is that sort of lingering niggle of, why am I in this room? Why have they asked me to do this?
Hmm.
What's your, have you developed sort of coping strategies or mechanisms to deal with that when that crops up?
Yes. People call it limitless beliefs, or limiting beliefs, excuse me, false narratives. I try to sit with the feeling and say, okay, where is this coming from? And then I try to give myself two or three or five, however many I need, real life examples and evidence of why it's not true. And then if it is true, what does it even matter? So why am I in this room? I'm in this room because I am smart. I have got the chops. I've earned my seat at the table. I've delivered this before. I've done that. Will this fail? Maybe. But guess what? It could also succeed. So I think I think you can live in a mindset of, it's never going to work, it's always going to fail, I'm going to worry about it. Or you can choose to do the exact opposite. And one of those ways feels so much better than the other. If you think this is going to work, this is going to be awesome, even a little bit delusionally, you just automatically, like, your chest rises, you have more presence, you are more confident. Versus you just feel better. Isn't it way more fun to think it's all going to work out than to sit there and say, oh man, I don't think it's going to happen? And you just shrink down. I would rather just have myself be like this. So I try to knock it on the head, give myself a slap, acknowledge it and feel it, but then slap it away with evidence. Because what you tell yourself up here is often not the case. And I think we could all just remember that we're at the seat because we have done the work and we deserve to be there. But when we are giving ourselves a hard time, I think the main way to resolve that is through fact.
That's great. I love that. And it's
Yeah.
something that I forget every single time when I hear that voice crop up. And I still do now. 30
Mhm.
years in, I still hear, but are you talking to me? Or
Yeah.
you want, like, so that's a great tip. That's a really, really great tip. Hi. If what we're talking about in this episode is resonating with you, the challenges faced are the ones that are in front of you right now, the path they've taken is your dream career path, whatever it may be, stick around until the end of this episode to find out how you can work directly with me to level up your leadership skills. Get 30 years worth of experience downloaded into your skill set in just 4 weeks. At the same time, meet amazing other design leaders as part of your cohort. Thanks for listening. I'll see you at the end. I'd love to know, when you think about all the projects you've worked on, all the people you've worked with, everything that you've delivered and got out there into the world, is there a piece of work that you're most proud of?
That's a that's another great question. I think I was actually talking to one of my really good friends, an old colleague, about this a couple of days ago. We did a project in 2014, I think it was. We were working with Justin Timberlake. He had a fashion brand at the time called William Rast. It had done very well in maybe like the 2007, 2008, way before I ever worked on it. And then I think it had either had some ownership changes and it wasn't doing so well, and then the company that I worked for had purchased it and we were reinvigorating. That's a lot of the brands that we bought and that we were doing. The goal was to take something that was legacy or wasn't doing so well and reinvigorate international markets, etc. And we put together this experiential event. It was myself and my colleague, and yes, there was a couple of other people involved, but we were the guys on the ground. And Justin Timberlake was on his tour, and we were bringing some fans, some retail buyers, some PR people to his show. And we did a fashion presentation in Covent Garden. We did projections on Marble Arch. We did them in Shoreditch. We did them on the Houses of Parliament, I think. And then we had this boat experience that went I can't remember where it went from, but it went all the way over to his show. And we put all of that together and we handled the entire thing. We were in New York and this thing was in London. And so we managed everything. And then we got on the plane and then we activated it. And then they all went to the show and everyone had the most amazing time. And when I look back at that, like, it doesn't change the world, but it gave people this amazing experience. I think we had a radio activation as well where, you could win tickets if you called in and you did all of these different things. And it was a touch point. It was 5, 6, 7 different touch points with no budget, scrappy on the ground, just making it happen. And it was really, really awesome to do something like that. Also, back in 2014, when social media wasn't as big a thing as it is now, it felt very innovative and kind of crazy. And I think the thing that I love about it the most is the experience that I had with the colleagues I was doing it with, and the buyers and the fans who got to experience and get close to a superstar. That felt really good.
I love that. And what an achievement, like coordinating all of that across time zones, across the world. That's
Yeah,
no mean feat at all.
yeah.
No small feat, I mean, sorry.
Yeah. I remember we partnered with a PR agency on the ground in London who helped us with the projections, because that was illegal. You weren't allowed to do that. You went round, you put the projection up, and you had to take it down. And um, it was a fun ride for sure. Yeah, and I'm sure
Mm,
there's many others, but that's the one that springs to mind.
that's great. You used the phrase like we're not saving lives.
Hmm.
And I want to kind of hone in on that a little bit because I know exactly what you mean. It's not dismissive because there is a huge importance in art and culture and creativity of creating moments of joy that
Hmm.
don't necessarily do anything other than make someone smile or make someone cry or laugh or whatever.
Hmm.
And I guess that sort of comes back to the emotional response through line. But was that part of that experience? Like, was that a very intentional part of that to make people feel something with these activations?
Oh yeah, I mean, there is an end goal. It's a business. We were launching William Rast in London. It had in the UK. It hadn't been there for, I don't know if it had ever been there before, but it certainly hadn't been there for several years. We wanted to give the retail buyers an amazing experience because we wanted them to buy the product. So, there's always a goal that usually has a business, a revenue attached to it because that's what it is. But to be able to give regular fans who had no, they weren't buyers. They were people that just loved Justin Timberlake. To be able to give them an experience where they felt part of his brand and his family. And when I say family, I mean his brand family, not obviously not his actual family. It it was great to see the joy that they got from this experience. And who doesn't love a boat ride down the Thames to get to the O2 to go and see something like that? So yeah, I think part and parcel of it is you want to give people joy. Like, especially now, I know that this was back in 2014, but there's so much heaviness in the world. And I'm sure if I looked back at 2014, there'd be a lot of heaviness as well. But why can't we bring joy where when it's not, like I say, it's not saving lives. It's not a cause that is something where we have to be serious. It's fashion. Fashion can bring so much joy to people. It's an expression. So let's make sure that we're bringing that joyfulness and that emotional branding into it. And we're talking about fashion and music and entertainment and art and creativity. And that makes people feel so many things. And so why not have fun with it? Because there's just so much other stuff going on in the world, in your personal life, that if you aren't having fun where you can, then I honestly don't know what the point is.
I love that. And I think there's, there's a great approach there that anyone listening in this working in this particular sphere will understand. But I think also anyone listening from a different discipline, especially what's coming up for me at the moment, products, digital products and experiences.
Mhm.
I think it's so important to remember those moments of joy within whatever experience you're creating or product you're launching,
Mhm.
because those are the things that make an app really special. Those are the things that lift a digital experience above the
Yeah.
norm,
Mhm.
exactly the same way as with an experiential campaign or activation. It those moments that make you feel something, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree.
I'd like to flip it a little bit, but I promise we'll come back the other way again. So, is there a point where, or a moment where something didn't go according to plan, and what did you learn from that?
Oh God, so many moments that didn't go according to plan. Um, can I think of one specifically? Um, Moments that didn't go according to plan. I mean, I've certainly had times when I've been doing experiential events and you've had ridiculous tech issues or, something didn't arrive. Um, I've done campaign shoots before. Oh yeah, I've done campaign shoots before where the celebrity that you've booked has got stuck somewhere because of the weather, and you cannot uh, postpone the shoot because you're going to lose all of the money. The production, the photographer, everything is done. You can't cancel. So then you have to find someone else, but you want the celebrity or the model, whoever it is, because they make sense for the storytelling and the brand. But you can't do that. So then you have to figure it out. And you have to remember that the consumer doesn't know. And I think that's the most important thing. With that run of show, something will always go wrong, but the end consumer doesn't know what it was supposed to be to start with. So they aren't going to look at that campaign or that experience or whatever it is and say, oh, wait a minute. It should have been that person, or why is that light like that, or why is this happening over here? And just remember to take a step back and say we're going to do the best that we can with the assets that we have and with how with what's unfolding in front of us. There's a movie called The Martian. I'm sure you've probably seen it. And in that movie, I'm sure everyone's seen it, so I'm not really going to give anything away. It's towards the end, and the spaceship, they're coming back and they're going to pick Matt Damon up, and they're going to do that sling thing, and they do the thrusters and they realize that they're going too fast and they're too far. So basically, they're not going to be able to get him, and they're just going to wave at him as they go by. And Jessica Chastain's character, she says, "Work the problem," and that's always stuck with me. I hear that line in my head whenever I have something that happens. It's like, work the problem. Think about the reality of the situation. What could the potential solutions be? It's not a disaster. You can figure it out. It's very, very simple, but it's definitely had an effect on me. I think it's kind of comical that I got that from The Martian of all places, but um, that's what you have to do. Everything, for the most part, is solvable, especially in our industry. And I think maybe you put a piece of creative out and it's not right. Okay, take it down and change it. Um, I've never been in a situation where we've put anything out that has been very, very poorly received. So I can't really speak to that crisis management side of things. But I think that honesty and ownership is the best policy. If you make a mistake, own your mistake and come with a solution. If Yeah, so just don't overthink it, but try to take the steps to make it right.
I love that. And coming from the world of entertainment before I moved into design, that whole old adage of the show must go on,
Mhm.
is so true in I think in any creative endeavor. And you're absolutely right. People don't spot it. They don't spot when a line wasn't how it was written. They don't spot when a light wasn't working the way it should work, or an effect doesn't go the way it should go. And um, I think it's also true, very true to say that you need to take that into the project that you're doing. If it doesn't go quite according to plan, it's fine. Most people aren't going to notice. I think it
Right.
also works for pitches as well. Like if you put together an amazing pitch, there's three concepts, and there's always one that you absolutely adore and you really hope the client goes for, and they often go for a different one for whatever reason. And it's so easy to then go through the rest of the project thinking this would have been so much better with the other concept. I wish they'd gone for the other one. This is all right, but it's not the other one. And I think you have to remember that no idea is ever gone.
Yeah.
You can always reuse that idea in something else in the future.
Mhm.
But you shouldn't get stuck on it either. If something happens or doesn't quite go the way it should, just carry on, just keep going and make the best of what you've got in front of you. There's that opportunity there to do that. So I think that's a perfect example of that. Thank you for sharing.
I was going to say as well, I also think as well, a good exercise to do is to ask yourself, will this matter in a week, in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years? And most of the time, the answer is no. And if the
Um,
answer is yes, then you ask yourself, well, why? What is it? Is it my ego? Is it my own self-preservation thing that I am, going to just keep this chip on my shoulder? Or does it actually really matter? Because most of these things simply don't. And that allows you to be able to just let it go and keep moving.
100% agree with you. Yeah, I love that. I promised you that we would flip back the other way.
Hmm.
So outside of work, what are you
Yes.
most proud of?
My son, being a mom. Yeah, I had my son. He will be 4 in December. He is the greatest joy of my life. Um, so yeah, he is 1,000% the thing that I am most proud of.
What
Yeah.
a lovely answer. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Hmm.
When we think about everything that's going on with the world right now,
Hmm.
all of the things, the sort of perfect storm of things that are happening,
Yeah.
and then we also bring in, rapidly emerging tech and artificial intelligence and the negative and positive impact that that's having across every industry, but especially the creative industries. And then we think of two groups of people, those entering the profession right now at junior level,
Hmm.
and those that have been, that are a senior level, and they've been in the industry for a while, but they've been out of work for a long while. What's your thoughts on or advice for them in navigating the current situation right now?
Yeah, it's another great question. I think the the reality is that you have to find a way to lean in to AI and the people. This maybe this sounds like a cliche because I feel like everybody's saying it, but there is truth to it. That AI is not going to take your job. It's the people that know how to use AI that will take your job. I think for the creative industry, it's a nerve-wracking time, that the tech just keeps getting better and better. Um, I've been playing around with Sora 2 and it's crazy what can be done, but you still have to know how to use it. You still have to know what to say. You still have to have the right wording and the prompts and the vision, You cannot put a person who doesn't have creative vision in front of the computer and have them spit out this incredible emotional piece of creative that works for the brand and works for the consumer, because that is a skill and it's an inherent skill that you learn and you hone. I also think that um, it will never replace that emotional human connection. I use AI. I can chat with ChatGPT, and Claude and quite a lot of the others. And I think that there is a lot of value. It saves me a lot of time. If I wanted to do some research, yeah, have it go and do the research, but you still cannot take away from the fact that this right here, that what we're doing, you can never replace that, in my opinion, with AI. I think if you're entering the workforce, um, you should take as many, well, not, don't take as many AI courses as possible because a lot of them are complete garbage, but I think educate yourself. Um, and if you are older in the workforce, you know, I guess the thing I would say to that is again, make sure that you are keeping up to date with the technology as best you can, that's relevant for you. And then I keep reading about how you should stop putting your graduation year and your date of birth and all of this kind of stuff on your resume because people just filter you out if you're over, God, even now it feels like if you're over 40, it's a problem, which is insane.
I think especially at the moment, ageism is very prevalent.
Hmm.
It appears to be, I'm hearing a lot of people over a certain age in the creative industries finding it incredibly difficult to get past that barrier. And anecdotally, I've heard, that the big four have a sort of cut-off age limit
Hmm.
over which, forget it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, which is, but you know what, which is crazy and completely insane because think about, I feel like every single generation it has a difficult time, right? Like Gen Z gets a bad rap because they want to work in a different way. And boomers are like, Gen Z never doesn't want to do anything, but they just want a different life because guess what? The world is different and the economy is different. You can't buy a house. The wages haven't increased. I went outside and it cost me like $25 to buy a salad and a coffee. And that's actually not that bad. Like, what are we talking about? Um, and I think that Gen Z gets a bad rap because they want to work differently. And I think anyone over the age of 40, like this idea that you're what is the word I'm looking for, but just, too old. You have so much experience of life, of like managing, of leading. Maybe you haven't even been a leader in your actual job, but you sure as hell are leading outside of your job. And you cannot say that a 20-year-old has more life experience than a 50-year-old. You could put both of those people together and they can learn from each other. But to say that everything needs to be just the young people versus those older people, it's so um what is the word that I'm looking for? But it's a narrow way of thinking. And I just think there's so much breadth and depth that comes from life itself. But how do we bring this both sides together and make it easier for people to integrate?
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Um, the best piece, I think I probably have several pieces. One is that absolutely nobody knows what they're doing. And that's something that I have come to realize. Um, I wrote this LinkedIn post, which is how you found me, and it completely blew up, which I didn't expect it to do. But there was something that I wrote in there that very many, many people have commented, and it said, "Do I know what I'm doing?" Question mark. Um, Never and always simultaneously, or something like that. Which is what it is. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. And the only difference between those that succeed and those that don't succeed is the fact that the people that don't know what they're doing just keep doing it anyway and then figure it out. So, you don't have to have all the answers. You just have to start somewhere and keep going. And then the CEO who brought me over to the US, I remember her saying to me, don't ever come to me with a problem if you don't have at least one solution. And the solution doesn't necessarily have to be the solution, but she's like, I never want you to come and tell me about something if you haven't thought about at least one way that we can resolve it or figure it out or do something differently. And I think that's really been very, very helpful.
I love that. And it could sound quite harsh, but I think it's actually an incredibly empowering way to lead a team, to give them the opportunity to fix something.
Hmm.
One of the biggest learnings I had when I was at Microsoft was, if you put your hand up and say, I broke that, that was me,
Hmm.
um, people will come around and help you. They'll gather around you and say, okay, no worries, how can we fix it? How
Mm.
can I help you? Whereas if you try and sweep it under the carpet, you try and hide it away, it will come back and bite you in the ass. And so I love the idea. The sort of extension of that is what your CEO or ex-CEO said to you, of like, yeah, hold your hand up and say, I did that, I broke that, but come with a potential fix to that as well.
You were saying, you were saying how that if you put your hand up and you say, you know, this has happened, that people at Microsoft, they would try and help you. And if you try and brush it under the carpet, that never works. And that's something that I've always said to my team. Um, it's okay to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. The people at the top make mistakes all the time. The thing is, when you do make a mistake, say something. Don't try and just hide it. Don't be ashamed. Don't blame anyone else. It's okay to make mistakes. In fact, you should make mistakes because that's how you learn. And it means that you're trying something differently. And then when you have made the mistake, learn from it and let's not try not to do it again. But I think that I really like that philosophy at Microsoft that people will help you. I think there's too much fear mongering that happens where people, especially entry level people, maybe don't feel empowered to have a voice or bring their opinion to the table and then get scared when something does happen. And everyone's bringing their own unique perspective. If you think about, okay, yeah, sure, a brand might be targeting a specific set of customers, but we're all, even within that specific set, let's say they're targeting 18 to 20-year-olds. How many 18 to 20-year-olds do you know that are exactly the same? You don't know anyone that's the same. And everyone's having their own unique experience with this world and with their work and with everything that's happening to them. Like, even sitting here now, the blue that you see right here is not the same blue that I see. And is it really even blue? Because it's what our brain is showing us. So this idea that the person who is new and inexperienced doesn't actually have anything important or intelligent or a perspective to share is false in my opinion. And I think as leaders we should be encouraging people to say what they think and contribute and have a seat at the table because maybe they see something that we don't, because guess what, they're 22 and they're living in a completely different world to the one that I grew up in. So that's a big philosophy for me when I'm leading my team, or when I used to lead a team, because now it's just me.
The conversations at the water cooler have become much shorter now.
Exactly.
Um,
Just me.
um, but I love that though. I love that, we all have experience. We all have life experience. Yes, someone who's 20 has less to draw on than someone who's in their 40s, 50s, 60s, but they still have that experience and they still have a point of view and they still have insight. And you're completely right. There's something that everyone can learn from everybody else. There's a two-way flow of learning. And I think it's so important to set a team up to be open. Last season, we had Dave Zabosky, animator at Disney during the second golden age, and he talked about uh, uh, what's the word? He talked about a process there called plussing. So as you join that department, you were taught about plussing, and the idea was that you're working as a team. You can always plus someone. Doesn't matter whether they're above you or below you within the organizational structure. You see someone working on something, you offer, can I plus here? Can I plus what you're doing? And if you are part and parcel of this, if you want to have the ability to offer a plus, you have to always be open to receiving a plus. So no matter who you were, no matter who'd come up to you, if they said that, you would be open to it. And you would say yes, and then they would give you their advice. And the idea was that there was this permission to have a free flowing insight, free flowing points of view that collectively would make the better whole, which I love. And I think that's exactly what you're sort of setting up with your teams in saying, come to me, talk to me, share these things with each other. And I think there's also the openness of a leader to say, I don't know how to do this, but I know you do. So
Mhm.
can you show me how to do that? And we'll get there together. Or I have no idea how to solve this problem. So let's figure this out together. Like, let's all put our heads together and find the solution.
Yeah.
Can we, is it okay for us to talk a little bit about the circumstances behind that post that you and I connected on?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, like, that post came out of a layoff. And
Mhm.
I know a lot of people listening to this and watching this are going to be in exactly the same position that you found yourself in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, first of all, I understand, and having been in exactly the same position myself, the impact of that is monumental in many different ways. What was your, so take us through the way you navigated through that massive life change.
Yeah, thinking about my layoff. I got laid off. It was in April. It was unexpected. It was very traumatic. And then, I went through a whole world of emotions, which I talked organically and very authentically and openly about on LinkedIn, which was I was angry. I was mad. I cried. I cried during the call. I felt like a failure. It never happened to me before. And then I felt relief, in all honesty. I felt relief because it wasn't what I wanted for a long term anymore. And it wasn't aligning. My values didn't align with the values of the company anymore. And there's no right or wrong there. It just is what it is. And I had been thinking about wanting to do something of my own for a really, really long time, but I'd always been too afraid. And so the decision was made for me. And I took some time. I think it's very important when you go through something like that, especially the first time, if you've never been laid off, is to, you think that it's your fault. You think that you've done something wrong. You think that you're not good enough. You think, is it my work? Could I tried harder? Could I have done this? Could I have done that? No, it's a business decision. That's what it is. It's there is no emotion in it, which is hard because you have spent a significant amount of time and energy in a corporation. However, at the end of the day, it is business. And so I think thinking about it from that perspective allowed me to remove some of the emotion that I was feeling. And then I picked myself back up because, I've been in a lucky position that I have only the last time I had to apply for a job was in 2005 maybe. And everything that I've done since then has been through networking and headhunting and recommendations. Um, but which is why I think the power and the importance of keeping up I like to do things the right way. I have always stayed on very good terms with everyone that I've ever worked with, for a reason that you never know what's going to happen. But it was it was rough. Um, I gave myself some grace. I gave myself some time. And then I got to work, as in what was I going to do? How was I going to figure out having my own business? What did that look like? What could it even be? What was I good at? What was I not good at? I think one of the first things that I did was talk to my spouse about our financial situation and have a conversation and say, okay, I'm going to go for this because I believe that if you put not necessarily all of your eggs in one basket, but if you put your energy into something, that will help. I didn't want to be applying for jobs and then trying to build a business, applying for jobs and trying to build a business. And so I said, I'm going to try and do this. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it could be. And we talked about how long I would do it for and how much of our, emergency fund and savings, etc., we were prepared to put into it. And my wife believes in me so much. She was like, you can spend all of it because you're going to succeed and you'll never need to spend all of it. And I was like, that's amazing. And I didn't know what I really wanted to do because I've done so many things. Like if you look at my resume, my background, like I've been a graphic designer, I've been a creative director, I've built brands, I've done business development, I've done PR, I've done basically everything. And at first I was terrified thinking, well, I don't even know what niche I'm supposed to have. I'm a little bit of a generalist and everyone talks about niching down and your ownable idea and what is the one thing that you want to be known for. And I thought, well, I've got like 10 things that I'm really good at, and how am I supposed to pick one? And so I I wrote down a list of anything that I could talk about for 2 hours unprepared. Like, what could I do? And then I looked at that list and I thought, okay, well, these things over here, they make me feel good. And that one over there, I never want to do that. And I, just put together a deck of different types of experience that I had and different things that I wanted to do. And then I talked to people and I, landed a couple of retainer clients who were amazing. And then I have another project client, and they're all in completely different worlds. One of them is in the talent management space that I was in before. One of them is brand building for an interior designer. One of them is creative strategy for legacy brands and reinventing a very old New York brand in fashion that I'm currently helping to reinvent. And is using all different sides of my brain. And right now, I don't know where it's going to go, but that's okay. I'm in it. I've got no idea if I'm going to, expand on this talent management side again, or if I don't want to do that, if I'm going to go back and just be in creative strategy, or if I'm going to do both and they can live harmoniously. But I do know that I never gave up. And my word of the year, which I made and decided upon in December of last year, was discipline. And it was discipline to show up every day, discipline about my mental attitude, discipline about, exercise and wellness, discipline about the work. And the word of the year, if I look back, you'd probably say it was transformation, because my life is so different to how it was at the beginning of the year. But that word has really served me, because even though at times I was, crying, thinking, what am I going to do? No one's going to want to hire me, like my resume is a lie, which it completely isn't. But those are the things that your brain tells yourself at 3 o'clock in the morning. I had the discipline to get up and say, I am going to try and do this, because it might fail, or it might be the most amazing adventure that I've ever had in my life. And I'm going to kick myself if I don't give it a try. So I'm just figuring it out. And I developed a online a workshop. It's called the Reframe Sprint, and it is a 90-minute clarity workshop to basically help you try and figure out what's not working, how you're sabotaging yourself, and how, in all honesty, to get the fuck out of your own way. And it comes with a 30-day action plan. I am currently stumbling on the fact I've done the workshop. The worksheets are amazing. I have this awesome deck, and I'm stumbling on the fact that I need to do this right here, which is get on Loom and record so people know what to do. But I created it because I didn't know what I was doing, and the framework really helped me figure some things out. I was procrastinating on some things, but I couldn't see it. I would complain about doing all of the laundry when I didn't need to do the laundry, but what I was doing was being too afraid to go and do this other thing over here. And I'm just going to keep working with these clients and posting on LinkedIn. I feel that maybe I have become somewhat of a accidental personal coach almost, because ever since I did post that, I've had so many people asking me, how did you do it? What were the steps that you take? Can you talk to me for 10 minutes about what I'm doing? And it feels really good to be in service and to help other people. But the long-term vision, I don't know what I think it could be, but I absolutely know certain things. I know, number one, I never, ever want to be dependent on one stream of income ever again. I never want to be in a situation where I can lose everything just like that on a Zoom call. That's not going to happen. So I need multiple income streams. I also, um, the most important things to me are freedom and flexibility. I do not want to be chained to a desk. I want to work with the clients that inspire me and bring me joy. And I want to be able to work from anywhere. I want to spend time with my son. I want to spend time with my wife. I want to spend time with my family. And for too long, I have allowed my identity to be wrapped up in my work. It has been, and it's, partly it's ego, but I was holding on and chasing something that wasn't right for me anymore. I was enamored by glitz and glamour and all of this kind of stuff. But what's important to me now is all that the success for me has really changed. Success used to mean business class flights, corner office, massive, huge title. And that is not my impression or definition, I should say, of success. Success to me is flexibility, freedom. Yes, money. Of course, I want to make some money, but I want to make it on my terms, doing the things that I want to do. And I'm going to do my absolute best to make that happen. And if it doesn't work, okay, then I'll figure it out then. But I'm having the best time trying. And like, I have a picture of myself. This is why I created the workshop. I have a photograph of myself probably about a month before I got laid off. And I'm working. I have a tiny little dog, and his face is sticking out of my jumper. And I don't look like me. My hair is greasy. I've got massive dark circles. I look like a shadow of myself. And I was so lost. And I wasn't necessarily lost just because of the job that I was in. I was just lost in life. I did not know where I was going, what I wanted to do. I remember having a call with someone, and she said to me, this woman, she said to me, what would you do tomorrow if you were laid off? And I couldn't answer the question. She was like, how would you make money tomorrow if you were laid off? And I couldn't answer because I didn't think that I had anything of any value to offer to anybody at all. And she was like, well, wouldn't you just consult? And I said, well, why would people want to pay me to consult? And she said, but look at all of the things that you've done. And I was in such a bad place in terms of confidence, imposter syndrome, value of myself, that the the layoff was the best thing that could have happened for me, because I am a completely different person. I am the most me I've ever been in my life, and that feels so good to say. So I think that if someone is watching this or listening to this and maybe they're thinking about making a change, maybe they know that something isn't quite right, or maybe they've been laid off and they're terrified, my advice is to keep going, be kind to yourself, have some grace, feel all of those feels, but then don't self-sabotage. Slap yourself round the face if you find yourself wallowing. Wallow and let it go and just keep going, because everybody that's achieved something, they just never stopped. And the other people, at some point, you just gave up. So I don't know if that's a really articulate way to say it, but that's kind of my story for that.
It's inspiring. It really is. And I don't say that lightly. The thing that I mean, the whole thing resonates with me, having been in exactly the same positions, and going through exactly the same feelings. The thing that really hit me was that idea of thinking it's your fault, thinking that if I had only tried harder, or if I'd have done this differently, or is it because I said that in that one meeting, that one time, or whatever it might be, you really start to go into the minutiae of trying to figure out why you.
Yep,
And the way it becomes easy is by realizing it's not me, it's numbers.
exactly.
This is a spreadsheet, and that's all it was. There was a certain amount that needed to go, and I'm just part of that.
Exactly.
And but I think it is important to go through the anger and go through the sadness and the frustration and the shock, and process those and let those happen. Otherwise, they're just going to be stored up inside you. But I love the word of the year, discipline.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that because that's exactly what I'm hearing, is that's exactly what got you through. That voice that was like, no, you're going to get up this morning. You don't feel like it, but you're going to get up, and you're going to get washed and dressed, and you're going to sort breakfast out, and then you're going to get on with figuring out what the next step
Mm-hmm.
is, because
Yeah.
that's important. That's what you've promised yourself. Which feeds nicely into the last thing that I wanted to pick up on, which was that self-care.
Yeah.
Looking after yourself through this. I love that you had the support of your wife through this. That's a
Mm.
beautiful moment where she offered you that. I love that. But you
Yeah.
also need to give that love to yourself as well. And that's, for me at least, that was the really, really difficult thing. The undervaluing myself and not giving myself that self-care through that process
Yeah.
was really damaging, I think. And I think I would have come out the other side of all of those feelings a lot quicker had I have been able to show myself that care a little bit more. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And
Yeah.
I really hope that those listening and watching take that away and do that. We're coming up towards the end of our time, so we've only got a couple of questions left.
Okay.
Um, I would love to know what you would hope people listening or watching this episode will take away from it.
Hmm. I hope people would feel seen in some way, maybe not with everything that I've said, but I think the main thing is it's okay not to have the answers. I've always been someone that's wanted to, I guess maybe I'm type A, like control a situation, know all of the steps. But the beauty is in figuring it out and just going for it, um, rather than trying to have it be perfect before you take the action. And yeah, I think people, I want people to feel inspired and to feel like they're not alone in this process, and to know that no matter where you are in the season of life, everything is happening, like everything that you've done up until the point of being laid off or making a change, none of it is discluded. Everything has happened to get you to this point, and there are lessons and learnings in there. It's about what you do next. What is the choice that you're going to make? Are you going to say, I can't do it, and I'm going to be deflated and I'm going to wallow? Or are you going to say, okay, I'm going to make this change and I'm going to make this work for me? which is very hard to do in the very beginning part. So don't get me wrong. Like, it's easy for me to sit here now and say, I've got these clients and I've got this, and it's been 6 months and I figured it out. Whoa, that's great for me. And at the very beginning, it is so hard, but just to keep on going and find people that have the thing that you want, or the thing that you aspire to have, and talk to them, ask them. Message that person on LinkedIn that you follow that has the business of one, and they're working 20 hours a week, and ask them how they got to that point. How did they get there? Because they sure as shit worked really, really, really hard to start with, to set up their life to get to that point. And they'll probably, maybe they won't reply, but maybe they will, So think about it that way. You don't have to have all the answers, but someone else is already doing the thing that you want, and they know, and they want to share. So I would say that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Mm.
We're at the final question, and it's the same final question for every guest that comes on this show. Are
Okay.
you, Lucy, awaiting approval?
No, I already have the approval. I got the self-approval right here.
Fantastic. Love it. This is your moment. How can people get in touch with you? What links or places do you want to share?
So there's my LinkedIn. Um, you can find me on lucyjackson.com. You can check out my services and website there. But LinkedIn is kind of where I spend a lot of my time. So I think that
We haven't even also talked about your friend's um,
my friends.
newsletter. The
Yes.
Friendster, yeah.
Yeah. So that came about after I'd done the exercise of writing down all of the things that I could do for 2 hours that I could talk about. And I went through the list, branding, celebrity partnerships, marketing, blah, blah, blah. And then I put motherhood and all of these things. And then I wrote down friends, because I am like, if you're on Who Wants to Be the Millionaire and the question comes up about a Friends episode, I'm the phone the friend. I know all of I've watched it so many times. It became my comfort blanket. So if I was sick, or if I was not feeling great, or if I was cleaning the house, I would have it on in the background. And I remember staying at one of my friends' houses, and they'd been out and they came back, and I'd fallen asleep on their sofa, and it said on the Netflix, "Are you still watching Friends?" And they took a picture of it. But anyway, I I realized that when I would be making decisions or something would be going on in my life, I'd be thinking about what action to take, and a line from the show would pop into my head. And so I thought, okay, let me create this newsletter where I take a scene from an episode of Friends and I reframe it into a modern life lesson. And it's a little creative project. It only has a few hundred subscribers. You can find it at thefriendstheory.com. You can find it on my LinkedIn. And it comes out every Thursday. It's humorous. It's a little self-deprecating, and it takes a little twist. And now, if you can hear, there is someone vacuuming right outside this room. So maybe that's where the end of the show. I don't know if you want to keep this in, but I did have one other thing that we didn't talk about because it didn't organically come up. But I have spent 17 years in the US now, and I am moving to Europe in 2.5 weeks. And so I'm relocating with my wife and our son. We're moving to Luxembourg. My wife has got an incredible new role in the space industry. She's basically going to design infrastructure that goes to the moon. So I guess I can call her a moon engineer. And we're relocating there, and I'm taking all of my clients with me, because my clients, I'm lucky enough that they don't care where I am or where I work. And so I think, again, going back to what I want people to take away from this is that your life can change so dramatically, but so so positively, if you dare to take a risk and dare to take a chance and bet on yourself. Because who would I have thought I would be about to move to Europe and work remotely with a consultancy with 3 US based clients? Like, I would have said, no, that's never going to happen. And it is happening. So trust your instincts, trust yourself, and just keep on trying, because at some point it always works out. Even if it's not the way that you thought it would, it still always works out.
I love that positivity. The positivity combined with the trusting the gut, combined with the drive, the discipline to keep going. I really love that. And of course, the story that you are moving and that your wife is building stuff for the moon and the
Oh,
friends theory, I'm now imagining Joey on a ladder
oh
with
yes.
light bulbs up and down the
Oh my God.
side in his
Yes.
play.
Maybe that can be my next episode. Um, yeah. Uh,
You,
Oh, my course's workshop is called the Reframe Sprint. It is a 90 to 2 hour self-led workshop, and you can find the link at lucyjackson.com and sign up.
I'll be there.
Great. I hope you will.
Lucy, thank you so much for joining me and for sharing everything and being so candid with your answers and your insight. There is a huge amount here for anyone listening or watching to get from it, and I really appreciate your time.
Oh, no, this was great. Like I said it before we got on here, this is my first podcast, and I think it's been a really awesome experience. So thank you very much for inviting me on.
You're welcome. If today's conversation got you thinking about your own growth as a creative leader, then my program, Supercharged Creative Leaders, might well be the next step for you. It's a 4-week cohort designed to help those in leadership positions and those aspiring to be in leadership positions to lead at a world-class level. You'll learn how to communicate with impact, grow your confidence, and lead teams that thrive, all without losing your creativity. It's a mix of pre-recorded video sessions, live Q&As with me and the rest of your cohort, and an incredible community of peers who will support you along the way. People who've already been through the course have gone on to win new roles, land promotions, get huge multi-million-dollar pitches, and they all put it down to the course and the confidence it gave them. So if you're ready to get noticed, get promoted, or finally step into that dream role, join the next cohort. Head to growwithadamjennings.com and sign up to Supercharged Creative Leaders. I can't wait to start working with you.